Greetings and salutations, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'm Nick. I'm a third-year literature student at the University of San Carlos and current overlord of PALABRA. In this series, we will be reviewing celebrity books, and I have chosen the icons, the McDonald meal moguls, BTS. I'm sure no one really needs an introduction to BTS at this point because they're just absolutely killing it everywhere. And as a casual army, I would like to judge them based off of their literary tastes. Yes. So I have five. I cannot count. I'm really bad at math. That's why I took literature.
I didn't go to school for math.
So I have 5 books that they have mentioned over the years. There was a compiled list on the internet. I'm sure you guys can find it, but we will be starting with what RM had recommended, and that would be Kafka on the Shore and Norwegian Wood. I find that a lot of K-pop artists recommend these books. Like Jonghyun from SHINee has also said that this is his favorite book, Kafka on the Shore, and I think Jinyoung from GOT7 has also recommended Norwegian Wood, so this should be interesting. Next, we have The Alchemist, which was recommended by Suga. Full disclosure, I don't actually really like The Alchemist because I'd read it before when I was... Anyway, I read it, but hopefully, now I'm 22. Yes, I am a hit Taylor Swift single. I will be able to read this with a new perspective. Next, we have Romeo and Juliet, which I can't really remember who recommended it off the top of my head. I'm gonna assume it's RM, because he seems like the type of person to read Shakespeare. The first time I felt seen in classics was when Mercutio was joking when he was bleeding to death. I really felt that,
A plague on both your houses!
Mercutio, very Gen Z energy. Voice of a generation, ahead of his time. He was ahead of his time.
Dreamers often lie.
Next we have 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. And I think J-Hope recommended this book. Also, he recommended, I believe, Around the World in 80 Days, but I don't have that book anymore. I had it, but like many things, such as my hopes and dreams, I had lost it over the years.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
These are the 5 books that I will be reading, but I will be able to read this and get a new perspective on things, and hopefully, we will be able to understand BTS more through these works of literature. Hello there, again. So I will be beginning with the thing I'm dreading to read the most, which would be The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And it's translated by Alan R. Clark. I think it's important to acknowledge the translators of literary work because they're essentially an author in their own right. I took a translation class, an introduction to translation, and I had to translate like 2 short stories myself, and it was immensely difficult. So I can only imagine how hard translating a novel would be, which is actually a fun theme with all of the other books that BTS has recommended because it's mostly translated literature. Jules Verne was a French author in like the 1800s. Yeah. And then Murakami is a Japanese author. He is currently alive. Jules Verne is like dead. Like Shakespeare's dead too, but we don't really like to talk about this guy. He's very oversaturated in the literary world, We must talk about new people. The Alchemist is about this boy named Santiago and his journey. The first time I read it, I was quite gutted by the ending. Because it's just like, all of that, and for what? But we at Palabra, we like to learn and unlearn, so maybe I just needed to unlearn the fact that life isn't necessarily like a grand thing, which has to come to an absolutely grand conclusion. Like sometimes, all of the time actually, life is incredibly mundane and we just do the same thing over and over and over again. And now that I know that, maybe this book will be better. Stay tuned. I will be back later today to give a review, and then I will be moving on to the Murakami books because I love Haruki Murakami, even though he's kind of a misogynist. Like, if you read his books, Mr. Murakami is a bit of a vociferous. He needs help. But you know, we're not going to be judging Mr. Murakami yet. Back to The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. See you later! Oh gosh.
20 minutes later.
I'm wearing different clothes because it's hot outside. Something I forgot that's quite interesting about this book is that Santiago's thinking if he ever wrote a book, he wouldn't introduce all of the characters all at once so the reader wouldn't have to worry, which is really interesting because this is exactly what's happening in The Alchemist. It's really interesting how it's quite self-referential, I suppose. But then again, isn't all work self-referential? Let me know in the comments down below if you believe that as well. If not, then tell me why not. It'll be fun. It'll be a discussion. Maybe we'll fight. It'll be fun.
A little later.
What's up, worsties? I have just finished The Alchemist and I would like to formally apologize for saying that I was dreading to read this book. I just needed a new perspective. I read this when I was probably like 14. And this, quite frankly, at the time was quite boring to me. I mean, it was really beautifully written and everything, but just didn't really do what I wanted it to do.
Clearly the struggle is real.
But now I realize that this book is very much, it's not about the destination, it's the journey, as cliche as that sounds. Through Santiago, I think I've discovered that whatever pursuits you have, they aren't necessarily meaningless. Like, they may never come to fruition, or they may never give you the thing that you really want, but they're not meaningless. And ultimately, life is just a series of pursuits, and maybe if you're lucky enough to pursue them to the fullest degree, you'll be rewarded. But yeah. Also, I love this book. There are little extras in the back, like a reader's guide. I don't know if can you see it? It's a reader's guide. And there's a map. I love maps. Maps are so amazing. Look at this map. Doesn't it look cool? Tell me that it doesn't look cool. We can fight in the comments. Actually, no, let's not. Let's have healthy discourse. So now that this has been fully consumed and digested, and I'm trying to find my personal legend. But you know, it's never too late to try, to search for what you're looking for. I feel like I understand this book more now, and I would recommend it to everyone out there who's looking for to maybe better understand themselves. I mean, it's very much the character's personal journey throughout this stage of his life. I'm not sure if you can call it a Bildungsroman, or a coming-of-age story, but maybe you can. But then Coelho has also said that this is a fable, which I don't necessarily understand myself, but if you think it's a fable too, please let me know why in the comments down below. And I think it really just took me some time to reread this and maybe understand it better, because I'm not the same person I was when I was 14, 15, or 16. I don't even think I'm the same person that I was yesterday. There's that. Okay, next up is Kafka on the Shore by Haruki Murakami. I love this book, but also it's deeply disturbing at certain parts of the novel, so go into this book with that in mind. There's themes of incest. The male gaze is used quite a lot. I think if you took a shot for every time Murakami used the word boobs, objectifying women in general, you would get alcohol poisoning and die. It's not a fun time, but you can like things and still be critical of them, because not everything is completely amazing and perfect and unproblematic. You can still appreciate good work while also acknowledging that it has faults. Hopefully, I will be able to finish the other 3 books after this.
15 minutes later. The following day.
Hello again. Oh my god. We will be speaking on Kafka on the Shore now, and it was translated by Philip Gabriel? Either one of those. I love this book, but I also deeply dislike certain parts, namely Murakami's... He objectifies women a lot. It's hard to get around, but we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room. He needs to maybe stop treating women as sexual objects. In the first 22 chapters, Kafka, our main protagonist, Kafka Tamura, who is the 15-year-old runaway, he's already sexualizing people. And he's always comparing women to his long-lost mother and sister. Oh, spoilers. Spoilers. This is not gonna be a spoiler-free review. I can't do that. As I was saying, Kafka always compares women to his long-lost sister and his long-lost mother. I guess, you know, the Oedipus complex is very strong with this boy. And the fact that he also has sex with them. Like, Sakura, who he thinks might be his sister, and Miss Saeki, who he thinks might be his mother. Why? This book is so beautifully written. It's whimsical, it's magical. There are characters that make absolutely no sense, like freaking Colonel Sanders. Yeah, the KFC guy. He's in this book. And so is Johnny Walker. Yeah, the drink. They're personified. And Johnny Walker is one of the villains who kills cats. It's weird, it's wonderful, but why? Why does Murakami always insist on having the male protagonist objectify women or just like talking about boobs? I mean, you know, I understand. Kafka's like 15. Most 15-year-old boys, all they're doing is thinking about boobs, probably. I don't know. I have never been a 15-year-old boy. But my favorite thing about this book is that each chapter is narrated by the different protagonists of this novel. So every first chapter is narrated by Kafka. So it's like every odd-numbered chapter is narrated by Kafka. And every even one is narrated by this really cool old man named, Satoru Nataka? Oh my god. Nakata! Sometimes I get things switched up, so yeah, so I forgot what I was saying. In true me fashion, I was talking about Mr. Nakata. Yeah, he's an icon, he's a legend. He talks to cats. He was in this freak accident during the Second World War that caused children to collapse on a field. A hill! It was a hill, and it's called the Rice Bowl incident because the hill's called like Rice Bowl Hill. Really interesting. And he wakes up with absolutely nothing in his head. He doesn't remember anything, how to do anything. But now he can talk to cats. I think that's super cool. Their paths, like Kafka and Mr. Nakata's, like are very parallel. I would really recommend this, but also, Mr. Murakami, please stop objectifying women. It's so sad. Like, the book is so well written. Like, there's this verisimilitude, which is just like fancy way of saying it mirrors life quite well. Like, the author doesn't shy away from writing boring things like showering, eating, and just like being painfully detailed with certain aspects that I find that other authors don't write about. It's a really great book, but it also is quite hard to digest if you're a younger reader. So maybe if you're a little older, let's say like maybe read this when you're 17. I feel like if you read this at like 14, 15, you're gonna get the wrong idea about a bunch of things. I don't think you've fully developed mentally to be able to read this properly. Most of the time, I mean, there are very intelligent 14 and 15-year-olds out there. Please don't roast me. I feel like maybe if you read this at 17, you'll understand a little bit more. Or you can see things better in retrospect, because if you read this at like 15, that's the same age that Kafka is, you might identify with him a little bit too much.
No! God, please, no! No!
Which isn't going to be a good time, I think, in my opinion. I don't think it would be a good time. This book is great. One of the things that I really liked while reading it the second time was that in the earlier parts of the book, Kafka's reading 1001 Nights, and the translation is by Burton, and we actually discussed that in one of my classes, the intro to translation that I think I previously mentioned in this video. Let me get my book.
Moments later.
If I'm not mistaken, I think we might have... No, it was Borges, not Burton. Translating work is hard. It's hard, and some people get away with just ruining work. And hopefully, you know, now that we are in the digital age, we are able to find better versions of translation, because sometimes you read a translation and it's just bad. It's sucky, it's boring, it's which is why you should always Google or look up which one is the best version, which version is the best translated of like whatever work you're looking to read, because translators make a difference. There are different translators. So as mentioned earlier, this was Kafka on the Shore was translated by Philip Gabriel. And Norwegian Wood, which is the next book I will be reading, was translated by, I think, publishers put the name of the translator on the front of the book too. They need recognition as well. Oh my god, where is... J. Rubin translated Norwegian Wood. I also have read this before, but hopefully I will come into it with new knowledge and a new perspective on things. And I think RM has some really great taste. I didn't mention this about Suga, but reading The Alchemist now was a really good thing for me because I think like most people, I don't really know what my life's purpose is. And I'm quite envious of Santiago that he's given these signs like right on, early on, and he doesn't ignore them. But then I think as a normal person without a magical king from Salem giving you stones to make decisions, it's hard enough to find what exactly you really want to do, and pursuing it is even scarier. Because when you're younger, I think that you could just have everything within your reach because they haven't really put limitations onto you. Like society hasn't put that many limitations onto you as a child. So you can be whatever you want to be no matter how outlandish it is. But as you get older and you tell people like, I want to be like a candy manufacturer or something, they're like, oh, there's no money in that. It won't do anything for you. Going back to Kafka on the Shore, I would highly recommend this to 17-year-old. And something I forgot to mention was that there's a trans character here. Oshima, you love to see it. There's aspects of magic and it's never fully explained, and especially the boy Crow, who is Kafka's constant companion throughout the novel. You're not really sure whether he's just a figment of Kafka's imagination or he's part of the magical world that Colonel Sanders and Johnny Walker. It's funny to say, okay? Like, this book is really fun. It's a very whimsical and fun story. It's wonderfully weird, but also read it critically because from what I've read, like just these two works, Murakami tends to have his protagonist just have sex with all the women he encounters. I don't really know what to say about that aside from maybe get some help, please. It's weird because Murakami's first reader and someone who helps him with his work is his wife Yoko. So, Mrs. Murakami, help him cut down on the sexism just a little bit. Just a little bit. That's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking. And before I move on to Norwegian Wood, I just want to say that if you guys are interested in the music that is being referenced in the novel, on Spotify there's a Kafka on the Shore playlist available where it talks about all of the musicians that Kafka's listening to, like Prince, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles. I think then again, I feel like in most Murakami books the Beatles are mentioned because, fun fact, Haruki Murakami, I believe, used to own a jazz bar, which explains why his novel is so musically inclined. If you listen to jazz music while you're reading his books, it feels like a really great sort of capsule. You don't necessarily feel like you're just in your room. You could be in the book. You can immerse yourself fully in the novel with the music and by reading, and that's just really great. That's another great thing about this writing. But yeah, stop sexualizing women, please. So I will be moving on to Norwegian Wood. And yes, I believe this is a reference to the Beatles song Norwegian Wood. Compared to Kafka on the Shore, it's a little bit lackluster. Probably because there's no magic, so it's not as fun, but understanding Toru and his life, this retrospection of his life and how things are clearer to him now, I think that's an interesting thing to read about because I think I'm about the same age as he is when he begins the novel, like telling his story back. I'm excited to see if maybe I understand references more now in this novel. Just a spoiler. There are 4 women in this book. Tell me why Toru fucks 3 of them. Tell me why. Tell me why. Why is this necessary in the plot? Is this a male thing? Other male authors don't necessarily do this all the time, but if you're uncomfortable with sex, don't read Murakami. Maybe read After Dark because I heard that is the only book without sex. But I have not read After Dark yet, but my friend Ara told me that there's no sex in After Dark. So if you want to get into Murakami and you're uncomfortable with sex, read After Dark. And I will get back to you guys after I finish this.
Several song-filled hours later.
I forgot how sad this book was. Men are really dumb, and the protagonist is a dumb man, but just listen to this. The thought fills me with an almost unbearable sorrow, because Naoko never loved me. Like, how do you recover from that? This is just chapter 1. I mean, there are ups and downs in the novel as well, but you just know it ends with a down. I feel really sorry for Toru, but at the same time I do not. Because I feel that he has taken advantage of very vulnerable women in this novel. There are 4 women. So there's Naoko, Reiko, Hatsumi, and Midori. And he sleeps with 3 of them. What does this tell you about our protagonist? That he's a whore! Slut! In all honesty though, I feel like most of the problems in this book stem from Toru not thinking. Like, he thinks, but does he really think though? He's taking up drama, but he doesn't like drama. Maybe he wanted to make himself really unemployable by taking English literature as his major or something related to that, because it's not like you get a job with... I am really hurting myself and the other members of Palabra right now. I mean, maybe if the humanities were more valued. It's quite fun that Murakami were RM's recommendations, because I feel like he's a very intelligent... I mean, I know he's an intelligent person. He has big brain energy. He has like an IQ higher than my height, which isn't too high, by the way. I'm only like 5 feet tall. I think that RM is a really interesting person just based off of these books that I've read that he's recommended, because I think it's a bit risky for K-pop idols to recommend like such sexual content with LGBT themes as well. Once again, the music is so present in the novel. You just think about it, like it's, I think, late 60s, early 70s, so there's like Bee Gees, Marvin Gaye. And once again, there's also a Spotify playlist with the music mentioned in the novel. It's been compiled, it's out there. You can listen to it if you're reading this so that you can immerse yourself more within the world. It's really lovely, but it just objectifies women a little bit too much for my taste. And I feel like Murakami uses women as a plot device a lot to move the main character, the main protagonist, forward within his life and his story by using these women, which is something I deeply dislike. But also, it's so good. His writing is so good. Like, tell me why Mr. Murakami is explaining how the characters getting dressed, like what they're picking, what material their clothes are, because that just fascinates me. It's mundane and it fascinates me. I wish more authors would do this so I could have like an idea of what the character is wearing in my head, because some people are just like, I woke up, I went out. Okay, but when did you get changed? What are you wearing? Where are you going? We'll never know until the certain part of the book is there. But yeah, this is so painfully sad. I think in comparison to Kafka on the Shore, there are less loose ends in this novel, but it's so sad. But it also captures Toru's age in this novel. I think it's very well portrayed as a person in their early 20s who has kind of this arrested development because their best friend has resorted to taking their own lives, and that's what really connects Naoko and Toru together. It's the death of Kizuki. And there's a very obvious awkwardness between the two of them, which is, normal because she used to be Kizuki's girl. As a reader, I find that this really strange and awkward relationship between the two of them is quite compelling, but also it's deeply problematic because she's so vulnerable. He's so vulnerable. I feel like at some points in the novel, they just take advantage of each other. If you're uncomfortable with penises and vaginas, would not recommend this. Once again, I would recommend After Dark if you want to get into Murakami's work but don't want sex. That sounds so weird, but it's true. There's sex in every book except After Dark. And I think After Dark has a female protagonist, so maybe all of these problems are just a character thing. I would recommend this like how I would recommend Kafka on the Shore, but maybe develop your mind and your sense of self and like your understanding of the world a little bit more before you read them, because you might just emulate these male characters that are incredibly sexist and overall not a vibe. Thank you so much to J. Rubin. Yeah, the translator of Norwegian Wood. Thank you so much for translating it into English. I actually prefer your translation to Philip Gabriel's because I feel like it's too Americanized, because I don't really know anyone in Japan that says like 3,500. Honestly, I wish they kept the units of measurement more or less the same, because they say miles and yards, but I would have preferred like meters, because I feel like that's more accurate towards what we use here in Asia. and in Japan especially. So my next book that I will be reading is Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, which was also recommended by RM, I believe. We are deciphering things about these idols through their recommended novels. Like Suga is a highly philosophical person because, I don't think anyone who isn't slightly interested in philosophy has read The Alchemist. RM seems to really enjoy introspection and a journey, but I digress. If you have a hard time reading these things, I would recommend reading along while there's a live performance, maybe from like YouTube and stuff, because let's be real, none of us can really afford to go see the production of Romeo and Juliet right now. Given the coronavirus, I think it would be the safest and funnest way to go about reading this.
2,000 years later.
I actually finished Romeo and Juliet last night,
Clear your throat.
but I really couldn't be bothered to film because I was so exhausted reading this. Like, I think tragic love stories are just draining, especially since this love story is between like two teenagers, two like children. Like, wow, y'all really died for love.
That was one of the most frightening experiences of my life.
Don't rush into things, kids. Why are the Capulets and the Montagues even fighting? Like, what's the point? Why are they so mad at each other? What did they do to each other? What if they're just fighting over a really huge misunderstanding? That would be so lame. And then after they die, their families reconcile because they got married in secret. Like, you could have just worked out your issues if you were real adults. Would I recommend this? Maybe if you're a hopeless romantic that's into this kind of love story stuff, but personally speaking, it was as bad as the first time I read it. Like, okay, they're in love. That's great. They're gonna die because they're in love. Okay, not so great. A little bit excessive in my opinion, but I digress. I will be moving on now to the last book, which is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne.
One pair of pants later.
I did it, guys. I read 5 books in 3 days. Would I recommend doing that? No. But I would recommend most of these books, however. I think BTS has some really good taste. Unsurprising. Have you listened to their music? Spectacular, wonderful, out of this world, never been done before. It was really great to read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. And I learned it was Jules because the S is silent. You learn more every day. I've been pronouncing his name wrong my whole life, and it's been translated by James Reeves. And Jules Verne is credited as like the father of science fiction since he wrote about like spacecrafts and submarines. I can say words. Submarines before they were technically invented, so that's really cool. It was an easy read, and it was so full of adventure, and it's very fast-paced, so it's hard to get bored while reading this, and it's surprising because this was written in like 1869. Amazing. That's a very long time ago. I would recommend this to everyone, even people who don't like reading, like children who don't like reading. Read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne. Oh, not Jules Verne, see? I have not internalized it yet. So I think I can safely say that I enjoyed this more or less, except Romeo and Juliet. I will never like Romeo and Juliet, even after like the 3rd reading. And that's okay, because you're allowed to not like things. So this was me reading BTS recommended books, and if you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments down below what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would recommend to me from their recommendations as well after reading these books. And I guess I'd like to take this opportunity to promote BALCS, Bachelor of Arts in Literary and Cultural Studies with Creative Writing. We are a very small group of students at the Department of Communications, Languages and Literature. We exist, If you're interested in discussing critical issues and social issues that relate to everything in general, then maybe you should enroll. I will leave all of the information in the description, in the description down below. Please consider enrolling because I think that the humanities are severely undervalued, and in the pandemic, many people have been entertained by the arts and the humanities. Even though we are so deeply unvalued by society, they're trying to not make us relevant anymore. However, I think it's important for us to study the humanities because it allows for better growth as a person. Even if you think you're not really developing in that manner, the humanities gives you the tools to become a better version of yourself, holistically speaking. So yeah, I guess that's the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Comment down below if you'd like to as well. And in the description box, there will be all of the links to Palabra's social media. And as for mine, it's unnecessary. Okay, goodbye. Bye-bye.